12B, safeguarding standards and oversight in Devon's publicly funded services. Ed, you've seen the recommendations there. You're probably not going to agree with them necessarily, but anyway, over to you. As I say, so as they stand at the moment, those are the recommendations that will go forward to full council, and that will be debated at full council. These recommendations. So you've got input now to see if we vary them now, and then there will be the opportunity at full council itself. So over to you, Ed.
Sure. So I'm going to go through each of these A to E, and it won't take that long unless there's lots of questions. But if we are being formally asked to note that the council meets all of its statutory duties and are working together, then I think that it's reasonable to ask how that aligns with the recent handling of the library matter. So a few questions. One, why was the provider permitted to investigate itself? Why was the CCTV not retained by DCC? Why was there no age-appropriate risk assessment made prior to the event and provided to DCC? And on what basis did the council initially claim that it had no jurisdiction when asked initially, following the recent relevations of the statutory guidance and working together seems to indicate otherwise? That didn't really make sense. But basically, the council initially claimed that it had no jurisdiction to investigate this, and when working together framework was brought into the mix, it admitted that it did, and it didn't carry out any investigation, and it should have. So in the absence of DCC making these basic safeguarding checks, is this council confident that it meets all of the necessary safeguarding duties, and can it confidently say that while it allows third parties to investigate themselves when safeguarding concerns are raised, that there are no child grooming gangs in Devon?
Thank you, Ed. Well, obviously we can't we can't guarantee that last question you just asked about grooming gangs. I mean, let's hope to God that there aren't. But,
well, not if you allow third parties to investigate themselves. You certainly can't.
Well, hang on. That's a different question, isn't it?
Yes,
that's a different question. What the recommendations to full council is that we absolutely do take safeguarding incredibly seriously, and we fulfil our statutory duties. Now, people may disagree with that, which they're perfectly entitled to, but I think the idea that somehow this council, and particularly our safeguarding officers, are not carrying out their statutory duties is, for my mind, that is not true. And I think that we do what we need to do there. My anecdotal evidence I have from this particular incident that you talk about, I mean, the police obviously checked it. They didn't find any issues with it. I mean, I do hear that, that there were some, issues, absolutely, and lessons have been learned in that sense. But I think overall, our safeguarding, our statutory duties, absolutely did what we needed to do. Those are always, it's a dynamic piece. As more, and particularly with social media, etc. There are always, that will be changing as it evolves. But I think as it stands at the moment, I'm absolutely 100% confident that our officers and our safeguarding teams, fulfil their statutory duties. Julian, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Thank you, Leader. No, I think the part of the issue is I think there's some confusion over the issues which were identified at the library. Now, clearly, some of the issues about the library may cause some offence to people around that, but it's a different matter from deciding that they were safeguarding matters in relation to children, because there's actually quite clear definitions about what safeguarding children is. It's about actually harm and significant harm to children. And certainly it's quite appropriate for an agency to carry out, as we do, carry out our own inquiries when we get things wrong. And we've got confidence in the testing of that review. I'm clear that there was no safeguarding children's issues in that library event. There are other lessons about the appropriateness of the material, warnings to parents, etc., which are entirely appropriate to be addressed, but that is not a safeguarding children matter. There was no concerns from I can see, or any evidence that any child was at risk in terms of harm or significant harm in terms of safeguarding requirements. I think it's important not to confuse issues around that aspects. Just touching on wider children at risk, as members will know, Devon, like all counties and authorities in the southwest, are affected by county lines activity, which is about the criminal exploitation of children, and does include sexual exploitation around that as well. And we work very closely both with the local police and also British Transport Police, because there is issues around the use of train lines, etc., in terms of those areas. So, and we have active and good involvement and working with Devon and Cornwall Police in terms of those issues. So I'm confident that we have the arrangements in place and that we're taking action when issues are identified.
Thank you. That was very clear, and thank you for explaining the conflation of two different issues there. Ed, I appreciate you may not feel that it goes far enough. We can discuss it here. I mean, let me open it up to other members first, and then to see if there's any movement on there, and then I'll give you the final say, and then we'll make our recommendations. Members, any comments? Yeah, Richard.
I'd just like to back up exactly what you said, Leader, on this. I'm very satisfied with the officer's reply on this, that safeguarding is correct in Devon County Council, and that we followed all due diligence. Very happy with that.
Thank you, Dan.
Leader, it comes ultimately down to a question of trust and professionalism. If you see something that you think is a safeguarding issue, your first course of action is to speak to the appropriate person within your organisation. If you trust that person to be doing their job properly, and they tell you that it's not a safeguarding concern, then it is not a safeguarding concern. And it's that simple. If you trust our officers, and I've heard what Mr. Worcester's just said, then therein lies the answer. Very simple.
Thank you, Dan. Jackie.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you for the responses that we've had today. As many of you know, I chair a young people's organisation called Totnes Rural Area Youth Engagement, and we take safeguarding very seriously. And I've heard nothing that's made me feel concerned. I value what Mr. Worcester said today in response, and I think we should, ideally leave the matter there. I think what we can do, if we're not careful, is rattle the cage of fear. And I don't think that's ever healthy, but I think equally we have to be very ready to be checked just to make sure everything's okay. And I think those checks have happened. So thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Denise.
I just wanted to thank Julian for what he said, and coming from a background of working in a school, you know, safeguarding is taken incredibly seriously. It's horrific, some of the abuse that goes on, and it is absolutely right and proper to have things in place which stop that, which share information, everything. This, however, is a matter of opinion. Having been at Devon Youth Council presentation and listening to some young people from the LGBT community, without finding their tribe somewhere, those children probably wouldn't be here today. And I think that on a moral ground, some of our public spaces need to be encouraged to be more welcoming to that community. And I understand that that's an opinion matter. And I think that's what it comes down to here. It's whether we feel that that is right or wrong. But we know in the past pushing opinions on people and becoming less tolerant to differences does not lead to happy resolutions. It leads to further division. And that's what I think we're hearing here. Where should those young people go to feel like they've discovered their tribe, to feel that they're getting information and to feel confident in their own skins if it's not something that's a public building? And like you say, lessons were learned in this. Perhaps there was too much noise. Perhaps there was some inappropriate material. But I welcome the fact that libraries can challenge that. And this is not a safeguarding issue.
Thank you. Ed, you've heard the views of cabinet members. Like I said, I'm not expecting you necessarily to agree with those, but I think the gist of it is that the feeling is this is not, it is and wasn't a safeguarding issue, and the safeguarding processes have absolutely been followed, and we are very confident in those. And I thank our officers for their professionalism in that. So yeah, over to you.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. None of the questions that I asked have been answered, but rather than labour this point, I think that it would be better debated at full council, and if we could just move on to B on the amendments, I'd be happy to move on.
Yeah, sorry. So that was, you want to move on to B now on those, or do you want to have the debate?
Well, this is going to get debated at full council with the full council, so I'm happy to just move on because okay. But I'm aware that we haven't got all day, or maybe we do have all day, but
okay,
yeah.
No, all right. Well, that's great. So okay, so I will move the recommendations as they stand. That these will go to full council.
Well, sorry, I was just referring to A. I said at the beginning, let's do each one, but like I said, it's going to be quite quick. So moving on to B.
Well, why don't you do all the other ones in one, Ed? Because otherwise we will all day.
So the council says that training is in place, safeguarding measures are in place, risk assessments and so on and so forth. But at the library event, for example, there wasn't a risk assessment in place. There was, there was no risk assessment. Training of staff was clearly inadequate. That's evident from the response to the not independent investigation, the self-investigation that the library conducted. Moving on to C, safeguarding clauses. Oh, I'm back on to red. It's okay. Safeguarding clauses should be uniformly applied across all third-party organisations, and designated safeguarding leads. So when I asked for the designated safeguarding leads details at the library event, they weren't given to me. It was always deflected. I asked for the risk assessment, it wasn't given to me. So all these things are safeguarding issues that Devon County Council should have independently investigated. I mean, I'm happy for all of this to go to council just as it is, and we'll debate it all there. So we'll just move on, actually.
Okay, no, thanks. Yeah, Paul.
Yes, thanks, Leader. I was thinking all the way through whether I should say what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it. I think that's the right decision, Ed, to take it through to council, these recommendations. But some time ago, and not to do with this council, my council, formerly East Devon, made an incredible mess of a safeguarding issue around a councillor, Councillor John Humphreys, now serving 21 years in prison for historic paedophile crimes. And there was an absolute requirement for the officers of the council to go through, and this has been independently investigated and reported by BBC Spotlight, so this is no surprise here. There was a period of time for about 3 years where that councillor was allowed to continue as a councillor. He was allowed to go around Exmouth, entering schools even, just because the necessary safeguarding hadn't been triggered by the officers who knew those people no longer work for our council. So I'm not coming in behind you here on this, Ed, and I'm absolutely fully in trust of the councillors here, the officers here at Devon. But I do hear your concern, because eternal vigilance on this is incredibly important. And sometimes, I'm not sure I personally agree. I think Denise has kind of got it around the issues at the library on the day. But I think unless councillors, at least annually, create a bit of a stir, which you are, around safeguarding issues, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. So I thank you for bringing this forward. I don't agree with you on the issue, but I do recognise that it's something that's it's a constant challenge, and it's a constant challenge for councils as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Did you want to come back?
Yeah, can I just say that I thank you for the comments that you've just made, and this is about vigilance. So basically, we need to be aware that regardless of the situation that we're working in or the organisation, anybody could be a paedophile. There could be people in this room that are later convicted of things that we sit next to each other and we completely trust each other from any political organisation. So vigilance is exactly what I'm trying to get across with this motion. And I don't think that turning this into any issue to do with LGBTQ or any other protected characteristic is the correct way to go. If this library event happened to be anything else, my reaction would have been exactly the same if I'd seen the things that I saw there. It was nothing at all to do with the LGBTQ community. I actually went to the event to reassure myself that there were no safeguarding issues after the emails that we'd all received from certain individuals. And when I went to the event expecting to find nothing to report back, I was deeply concerned at what I saw. But if this was any other type of event, my reaction would have been the same. It's not an attack on the LGBTQ community, and I just want to make that absolutely clear.
No, well, thank you for that, and that's good to hear. Anyway, so I will make those recommendations A to E. That will go towards full council, and then sorry, Michael, you wanted to.
I've got to tread very carefully here because obviously there are complaints against me over these issues. My concerns are, I think Ed, you were slightly wrong. You said we all trust each other. No, we don't, and we should never trust each other because we don't truly know each other. And I would hope that the problems that have happened around the country was because of the lack of vigilance. And I think we are the last line. We, as councillors, especially on this side of the table, have to continually question whether we are doing the best we possibly can. And I would hope that we all feel that. I'm sorry, I'm never going to trust people that explicitly, that something could probably happen, I will always question. And I think that's our job as councillors to do so. I hope that where these terrible things have happened up and down the country, it was not because people knew about it, but decided not to say anything. So I fully support anything that's going to safeguard our children, whether it's a perceived safeguard, because we've got to remember, we see it slightly different than the public do. They will basically see everything as a child safeguarding issue, even though it's not. And I think somehow we have to explain that to people. And the only way we can explain that to people is total transparency, not looking at things as if it's a tick box exercise. So I would say that I support what Ed Hill is attempting to do. And I think we all should really, because we should shine a light on ourselves so we do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Julian, I don't know if you wanted to just make some final comments.
Yeah, all I would say, I think there's a risk to the council if we begin to label all things as safeguarding children. And I think we just got to be really cautious about separating out issues. Now, people can be offended and upset about things, but labeling something as safeguarding has significant implications. And I think there's also a concern that we know from other councils who got things badly wrong, is that reputation for safeguarding children, which does exist in Devon, and we do have a good reputation in that space, is put at risk if you start labelling lots of activity as linked to safeguarding children. And I think we just need to be clear that we need to stick to the statutory definitions provided by government and parliament in this space.
Thank you. I think that's absolutely clear because, from what I've heard in this debate, we're all absolutely pulling in the same direction to make our children as safe as possible and to fulfill their lives. So, there is not much between us here. I don't believe, actually. But I think the point that Julian's just made there about we need to be careful not to drag everything becomes a safeguarding issue when sometimes it isn't. It's a matter of opinion. Anyway, I'll move the recommendations as they are. A to E. Paul, second them. All those in favour, please show. Lovely, thank you. Right.